Hello, my name is Tom Seidner, and I wanted to make this video to help out those of you who are running Carrera digital tracks and doing a digital to analog conversion to allow you to run analog cars on your track. I myself have created a box that allows you to chip the lanes and allows you to run analog cards on your digital track, but the only drawback is that you lose your lap counting ability, because the analog cars do not have the sensor in them to trigger the lap count. So what I've done for my track is I've created this piece of track that has sensors in it that picks up the cars as they go through, and I use this to lap count my analog cars. So in this video I'm going to go over how I made this track. In a other video I'm going to go over how I programmed the Arduino to pick up the laps and also send that data to the Smart Race. I use Smart Race on my track, and I'm going to connect to Smart Race with Wi-Fi. I'm using an Arduino with Wi-Fi integrated in it, and then I'm going to be able to send the information of the track to the Smart Race, so Smart Race will keep track of the laps when I'm doing an analog race. So anyway, when you watch this video, I want to apologize. At the beginning of this video I had the camera too focused in on the area, and because I'm doing this by myself and I didn't have a cameraman or anything, I didn't realize that some of the stuff was out of the camera view, so I put a bunch of pictures in there in the beginning to kind of help with that. So hopefully you'll be able to see everything that I did to make this track, and you'll be able to make this track yourself if you want a track like this for your analog cars on the digital Carrera track. I put my track right behind my starting track, or right before my starting track I should say, and so this sensor gets picked up at the lap as it comes around before it gets to the start, and then gets picked up every time there as well. So anyway, I hope this is helpful. If you guys have any questions at all, please put them down in the comments and I'll be sure to answer them. If you find this to be useful, please leave a comment of that. Also, I put a lot of work into trying to get these things to work, and I like to know that they're helping out other people as well. But anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and start the video.
Okay, I'm going to attempt to document the creation of this track sensor for analog cars to be used on a digital track where you're doing a digital to analog conversion. The first thing we're going to need is we're going to need some of these octocoupler beam type sensors. I can put a link to this on the video. I got these on Amazon for about 10 of them for about $8, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this black shield here. I'm going to use a razor blade to remove this shield. This one right here. And all you do is you get the razor blade up into the edge here. Just kind of pull up. Do the same thing on both sides. And just keep doing that until it starts to lift. They're not glued on or anything. They're just on there pretty slim, pretty thing, and then you can just kind of start wiggling, and you might have to get under there a few times just to get them off, but eventually they'll start lifting up and expose the little LED, or there's a LED transmitter and there's a LED receiver underneath this black plastic, and you just got to get underneath there and give it a good lift. There we go. It's starting to lift up now, and got it. And so you just pull it off. Once you pull it off, you're going to see the two units. This is the transmitter and this is the receiver, and it's going to be on the out is going to be high on the output until you break this thing, and then it's going to go low. You've got your ground, your power, and your out. I'm running these at 3.3 volts. Now I like to buy them in this form. You can actually buy these transmitters and receivers, but this has all the electronics on it to actually handle the high and low drop. So it's just easier for me to buy them in this form that's already done for me. So anyway, so now what we're going to do is we're going to remove these sensors from this board. The track is too thin to put this whole thing down in there, so we have to convert these into a little bit more usable item for the track. So what I'm going to do, and this is probably the hardest part of the project, is I'm going to desolder the transmitters and the receivers from this board. And also another thing you want to note, I don't know if you can see this or not, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, we'll see, but the long leg is positive and the short leg is negative, and that's noted on this board right here. It says positive, and that's on the long leg. On mine, and if you get the same ones, the transmitter is red and the receiver is clear, so that way you can kind of keep them apart. So I'm going to attempt to desolder these. This is the kind of probably the trickiest part of this project, so let me go ahead and get busy on that. You don't want to hesitate when you're pulling those out, because they will cool on you, and then once they get stuck where they're just barely in there, it makes them actually harder to get out. So I've got 2 transmitters here and 2 receivers here. Now what I do is I take these and I bend them out to a 90 degree. So you're going to hold them like this and then bend their legs out. You got to be careful, you don't want to break your legs off, but I like to bend them out to a 90 degree, because this way they'll fit in the track better. Something like that, so that it'll fit down into the track and not take, because the track's very thin, so you got to keep everything very thin that you want to do. So there you go, that's that one. You do want to try to get these up into the track as far as possible, because you want the sensor to be toward the top of the track, so that cars with slot flags that are shorter will actually trip the thing. If you get it too high, too far down in the slot, then your slot flag may not trigger it when it comes by. You want it as high up there in the slot as you possibly can get. If you get it too deep in the slot, you can put some black electrical tape on your slot flag of your car so that they pick it up. I had to do that with a Go car that had a little bitty slot flag, but I'd like to avoid that if possible. Modifying the cars is not what I want to do to be able to pick up the laps. So I'm going to try to get these up into the track as far as I can. So there, I've got those set at a 90. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and prep these sensors. I like to use red and black on the transmitter side, and then orange and white on the receiver side. And what we're going to do is we're going to solder in these things. You can get these on Amazon. Now I like to use these because they got this kind of needle end on them, and it makes it easier to get them in the holes. You got to have something that'll fit through the holes here. So, and then what I do is I take all of these and cut them in half, and I'll use one for one sensor and one for the other sensor. So let me go ahead and get these all cut in half. There you go. And then what I do is I take these and I turn these at to a 90 degree, so that I've got a nice 90 to go down into the board. Now these are extremely long, so after I 90 degree all of them, I cut them off, because otherwise you'll have to cut them off once you stick them through there. But I find it sometimes hard to stick them through there if they're that long. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn them all 90. You don't have to cut these in half if you don't want to. If you want to leave the whole thing, I just don't have an unlimited supply of these, so I find cutting them in half gives me what I need for each one. So, all right. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all of these off a little bit, because I don't want them to be that long. I still may have to cut them off once I solder them in, but it's harder to get this through if you've got a really long one. So I'm going to cut them all off, just to trim them down. Good right there. And so now I'm going to do the transmitter first. I need a red and a black for that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work from left to right. It just seems easier for me. So I'm going to do the negative first. And I almost made a mistake, but you want to make sure that you put the things on this side, so all of your things sticking up will be on the same side. So this is my positive, so I will start with my red, my positive first. I like to work from left to right, so I'm going to put my positive on this side. So go ahead and just heat this up and try to get my thing to go through that hole. That's a little tricky at sometimes, but if you get it heated up good, it'll drop right through. There we go. And once I get it through there, I like to square it up so it's coming off the end like that. You can have them go off the other end too if you want. So there's my positive, and I can double check that just to make sure that I'm in the positive, and I am. Once you get the first one in, then it's very easy to know where you're at, because the positives are across from each other. And then I'm going to do a negative here into the other hole. You can see there's some surface mount pieces on here. Don't get heat on those or they'll pop right off on you. So you got to stay to the pads there. Those are done. I'll move over to this other side. And I'm going to put the white on the across from the black and the orange on across from the red there. So let's go ahead and do that. Now you can see they're all protruding. Hopefully you can see that, but they're all protruding out the top there. So I know that I got a good connection. Now what I do is I just flip it over. Let the clip hold it together so they don't fall out. And then I give a little tin on top of them just to give them an extra little thing of hold. Make sure I don't have any cold solder joints there. And then I flip it around and do the other side. I use the clip to help hold everything down. Okay. That's one and done right there. That's going to be one of your sensor things. So we'll set that to the side, and we got to do the other. And there we go. There's my two wiring harnesses ready to go. Okay, so that's that. So the next thing we need to do is pretty much the same thing on these senders and receivers. Now for these, I just side solder these on. So I take my this is my sender, and this is my positive side because it's the longer side. I know it's the positive side. And then I usually like to put these female connectors on here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tin the receiver. So I like to get a big glob on the receiver. Try to get a big glob like that on the receiver. Then, and this is better if you don't have shaky hands, but then I like to just kind of, I side solder this on. Now you can, if you wanted to, use like some shrink tape on this, but I don't, because there's no way they're going to touch each other. My hands are shaking, so you got to hold it for a few seconds until you see you'll kind of see the solder change colors. Once the solder changes colors, you'll know it's ready. And there we go. And then I clip here, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, but that's going to be my black one. So let's strip this off. There's a lot of repetitive doings here, and tin this. Yeah, you can barely see that, but that's fine. And I'm going to tin this. And I'm just going to tin this together. like I said, if you just watch your solder, you'll see it kind of change colors. It'll go from a shiny silver to a dull silver, and then you'll know it's hooked up. And that's how I do them. I mean, the thing is, it's not like I mean, if you start yanking on it, it could pull off, but for the most part, there's going to be no yanking on this. Once it's in the track, it's going to be pretty much set. So there's one, and we'll go ahead and do them in pairs. So, and we'll double check. We got our red on the long side, and that is right. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one. And here's my next red. So we'll strip this. You don't need a lot of stripping on there. There, that's better. Okay, so now I've got the 4 of these all soldered up the way they need to be, and these soldered up. Now what I want to do is I'm going to strip and tin these so that I can stick them inside of there. So I want to strip them so I got a long enough piece to stick inside that female connector. Like I said, if you have enough of these, you can leave the tip on there and go that direction. All we're doing here is just tinning these up to stiffen them up so they're like a stiff pin. Try to keep them as straight as possible, because we're going to want to be able to stick them through. Trying to make sure you get them tinned all the way down to the end. I mean, if you don't, you can cut it off, but if you don't have it tinned all the way to the end, when you try to plug it in, it'll flare on you. Anyway, there we go. So that's the electronics setup for the thing. So the next thing you're going to probably want to do is you're probably going to want to hook these up to a controller. I'm going to use an Arduino, and you're going to want to make sure that everything is working properly. So what you're going to do is you're going to point them towards each other and make sure they see each other. The nice thing about these is they have a light on there, so the light will light up when they see each other, and then the light will go out when the stream between them is broken. So okay, so now this is just going to be the testing phase. I've got an Arduino controller right here, and I'm going to be using that to test. This is also what I'm going to be using to control it once I'm done. You're going to need some prongs to plug in, doesn't matter what color, and I'm going to use a male to female here. I am going to plug my blue into A01. You don't have to do this, but A01, but you definitely have to plug one of them into 3 volts and one of them into ground. So I'm going to put my gray into 3 volts here, and my whatever that is, purple, into ground. That's 5 volts. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 3 volts. You can use 5 volts too. These do support 5 volts, but I want to use 3 volts. And that's all you really need. You don't really need to hook up the data at this point. Eventually you will need to hook up the data, but actually to just test this you don't. But I'll go ahead and hook up the data anyway. So there we go. We've got all of them hooked up. That's the way it'll be eventually. You'll have a data line for each one of your pairs that's going to talk to each other. You're going to have a ground, and you're going to have a 3.3 volt. And then we're going to hook these up, each one individually, to test them. So I've got my gray into 3.3 volts, so that's going to go on my VCC. So if you look here, I've got VCC in the middle, so I'm going to put my gray one in the middle. And then I've got my brown is going to ground. So there you go. Or my purple, I think it's purple. It's hard to see in this light. And then the blue is my data, and
when you actually have this hooked up, it'll go like that. Come on, get in there. And so that will be the final hookup that you'll have when you actually have it working. I'm going to flip it over so that I can see this little light on here, because that's what's important to me. And you're going to notice that the light is not lit right now. That's because there's no connectivity between the items here. So, all right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my red and black, and I'm going to hook them together here. There's that. Oops. There we go. Black. There we go. And then we're going to do one of our orange and whites, senders and receivers. There's that. And like I said, you can directly solder these if you don't want to mess with poking them in. But then what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to watch this light here, and we want to make sure that this sender and this receiver, now they got a little bump on them, so you're going to point the bumps to each other, and as long as they light up when the bumps are pointed towards each other, you know it's working. So there it's working. I can break the sensor and put them back. It's kind of like your garage door opener, and so you can see that that is actually working. And so we know that those are soldered good, that's soldered good, and so everything's working on this one. We're just going to unhook this, leave that together, and then we're going to do the same thing over here. So, and then we're going to watch our little light here. And I got my nub here, my nub here. I'm just going to put them together so they see each other, break the plane, and you can see that is working, and so I know that one's working. So this is how you test it. Like I said, that data cable doesn't have to be hooked up for the testing. So I'm going to set those aside, and I'm going to go to prepping my track. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to prep the track. Here is a piece of straight track. This is where we're going to put our sensor in. What I'm going to do is I am going to pick a location, one of these blankers, and you want to do the ones that are right across from each other, not the ones that are diagonal from each other. And you're going to pick one of these. You can do either one, and then you're going to mark your track with a black marker inside the track like this and like this, and you have to do both sides. You're going to do, and you want to do the same one. I mean, you don't have to do the same one, but it makes sense to do the same one. And just get a good mark on these so that when you take the track out, you know where these need to be trimmed, because you're going to want to trim this metal back so that you can get the sensor down in there as far as possible. If you don't get that metal out, the metal will try to get in the way. I tried the original one I did. I tried to drill through the metal, but what happens is the drill bit just tends to slip off the metal. I didn't have a lot of good luck on leaving the metal in there. So I find that if you take the track out and then trim the track back and then put it back in, it's much better. You want to get the hole in here as high up into the track as you possibly can. You want it as close to the top of this track as you can so that it always picks up the flag. If you get it down in there too deep, it won't pick up the flag. So in order to take this track out of here, you're going to want to flex the track, kind of flex it kind of like that, and then that way it'll kind of open up that slot, and then you're going to be able to pop this track out. So just flex it and pop. So work your way down. You can also do it from the underneath side where the holes are. Just give a good flex and then push from that location. And what you're wanting to do is flex it enough that these little tabs will let loose. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to carefully work the track out. I'm not going to do this on camera because I need both my hands, but I'm going to work this track out and show you how that works. So
So as you can see, I was able to work this track out, and we're going to have to do each one of these individually. I'm going to do them one at a time so that I remember which way they go, because it's always, you know, alternating between these tabs here to this tab here. So I'm going to do one at a time, and what you're going to do is once you get the track out, you're going to find your mark where you marked it. Here's my mark where I marked it. And you're going to cut that little notch out, cut a notch out there, so that that's open to be able to put your sensor down in there. Okay, so the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make a slot in the inside of your rail there. I don't know if you can see that very well, but there's a slot right there. And what I did first is I marked where I'm working with a silver Sharpie, so I know that I'm in the same one. I don't want to accidentally get off one. And then I actually just took my soldering iron and I melted through, made a slot there. The slot doesn't have to be huge, but it doesn't have to be little either. You can even go all the way through the bottom of this if you want. Anyway, you just need to have an opening there that'll go to the other side. And then I cleaned it up with my Dremel tool. Now make sure that if you get anything in the slot, like melt anything in the slot, I took a razor blade and cleaned up the slot. You want to make sure the slot is completely clean. Then you want to make sure that this hole is as far up to the top as it possibly can, so you can get that sensor in there as far as you possibly can. So I'm going to do that same thing with all of these. I'm going to take the rail, I'm going to put this next rail back in. I'm going to take this rail out, do the same thing, and then I'm going to work my way all the way across. I'll come back to the video whenever I've got that done, and you can see the finished product here. Okay, so I've got the camera set up for this one, so you can just see me do one. I'm doing this one right here is the last one I have to do, which is this one right here. I've marked them with the marker here, and I've also marked them inside here so I know which way to cut. And so this is the one I'm going to be taking out. So I'm going to start at this end. This end's the easiest end to start at, and you have to give it you got to give it a good flex. It's a little hard to do. You can do it with your knee. Get your screwdriver in there, make sure you're flexing it, and then just start running your screwdriver down through there while flexing it so it'll pop out. If you don't flex it, it doesn't want to come out. So like that. Try not to kink it like in half, which can happen. So try to be gentle with it. We don't want it to have a big kink in it. We're just going to work it out by flexing and pulling. And it just takes a little patience. See, I flexed that other one completely out of there, but I can put it back in. Mainly I want to get this one out. You want to get it flexed down to the end there. The end's going to have some extra barbs on it, and you want it to kind of come out. So you just got to fight it. There we go. And you get down to the end, you're going to get it out. Now I popped this out. That's no big deal. I can put this back in very simply. What I do is take my screwdriver, push in on these little tabs, push that back in, and that only popped out because I was flexing it pretty hard. There, that one's back in. If you worried about them popping out, you can bend these little tabs here over. Just put them on your board and give them a little bend over like that. There's not going to be any pressure on these going that way anyway, so once you've got all these back in, then you're going to be good. So then we got this out, and of course this goes, remember these alternate. This is why we do one at a time. This is going to go back in this way, so the cutout is going to be here. It should have your big mark on here, but the cutout's going to be here. So I'm going to take a pair of reds, and I'm going to go wide of this, so about out to here. Just cut up, cut right along the top of here. I try to stay right on that, and then cut it. And then we're going to cut in. Usually I just cut from this side. Cut that out like that, like that, and then we've got our hole in there in this, and that's going to go back in there and allow for the this to not be in the way, because if this is in the way, it makes it really hard to get your sensor down in there deep if that's in the way. Now I'm going to take my soldering iron and I'm going to melt. I don't know if I can do this on camera very well, but I'm going to melt a little. I'm going to start here close to the rim. I'm going to melt into the slot like that. Getting up as high as I can on here, and you can see I've done that on the other side. Now I've done it on this side. Then what I'm going to do is take my Dremel tool and my razor blade and just clean it up. So I'm going to take my razor blade first, and I'm going to clean this. Just if you just go straight down with this in there, you can really get it cleaned up. That, and then also you want to make sure that you clean up inside your rail. This is the most important part. I want to make sure that you don't leave any slag from that melt inside your rail. So I run my razor blade straight down inside that rail, because you don't want your flags of your car hanging up on that. But that's pretty good. It's you can see that if you can see it, it goes all the way up to almost the top, and that's what we want. We want that to be as high up there as we can. I usually take my Dremel tool and just clean this up a little bit, just so my sensor doesn't catch on anything. Using the soldering iron really makes it really nice, and I just clean it out with any tool I have, just to get that all clean in there. And it looks pretty good. You can clean out the rail after the fact if you need to, after you're done, if there's any kind of catch on there. So now I'm going to move the camera back down to the floor, and we're going to attempt to put this piece back in. Now what I do is I take a pair of needle nose pliers and I straighten these back out so that they're easier to get in. So I just straighten them down, or you can even bend them in a little bit so that they kick in, but you don't want those flared out. So just get those there, and then you're going to stick this piece down in there. You want to get this little edge lined up with the edge of the track. Press her down in there, and then what I like to do is kind of twist it so that this side's in, and then I can just work on this other side. So give it a little twist. See how it's twisted there? I want to make sure I'm at the edge. Looks like I'm a little off the edge, so I want to make sure I'm right there on the edge with it. There we go, it looks better. And then I take my screwdriver and I just poke these down in there as I move my way down. And then try to twist it. Get that one side in. It just makes it easier if you twist it. And then pop that in and just do that all the way down. Once you get to where your hole is that you might have a little flare from cutting. I just push it in there. Push it down. Twist it a little there. This side in. And just work your all the way down until you've got the whole piece back in. There's actually two flares down at this end. So you want to kind of twist both of these in if you can. Yeah, I got both those in. You can see there's two flares here. So you're going to want to do one and then the other. It's amazing how the track will just go back together almost like you never did anything to it. And it's definitely easier than doing this than trying to get to drill through this metal, because the drill bit will jump all around on you and you end up with all kinds of weirdness. And then once you got it done, you can make sure it's all pressed in, flip it over, press it down, and then what I do is first thing I do is I bend these things. It's important that you bend these things back over, because that actually is a separate piece there, and it will fall out on you if you don't bend these over. So bend these over so they're bent over. Then I just go down the line here, just kind of make sure everything's bent over here. Of course, where you cut it out, it's not going to have anything. But I just make sure everything's kind of in there. Probably better than it was from the factory. And there you go. Now we've got our track with our sensor holes. And the next thing we're going to do is put our sensor in this track. And so we're going to do that next. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to install the sensors in the track. We're going to use our good old hot glue gun to actually hold them in. And believe it or not, that hot glue gun holds them in pretty darn well. The one thing you don't want to do is you want to make sure that you don't get any hot glue on the face of the sensor here. I had that happen, and then I had to pull the sensor out. You can always pull the sensors out and re-glue them in. The actual hard part of this project is done. Everything else is pretty easy. So I like to clean that up so the sensor will sit as close to there as I possibly can. You might want to angle these a little bit so that you can get them down in there farther, because you want to get them down in there as far as you possibly can. And then you're going to put your sensor in. Cut this out a little bit, just make sure I'm down there. It's amazing how these sensors, they'll see each other, even they don't have to be right on with each other. So but like I said, it's best to get these sensors as close to the bottom as you can. So if you need to, use some tools to clean up the hole so that you're sitting all the way in the bottom, but your sensor is I mean, you don't want your sensor behind, so you need to have your sensor like down in there, but there's a little nub there, and you want your nub to be in the hole. I'm going to get a little drill bit so I can clean this out a little bit. So I've got a drill bit here, and I'm going to just clean this out a little bit in here. Okay, that's pretty far down there. And I'm going to take my sensor. Don't worry if your sensor comes unplugged. Oh, yeah, don't worry if your sensor comes unplugged. Just get that all cleaned out. I like to clean the face so that the face is flat. I don't want the sensor up. I want the sensor to be able to go flat up against that plastic, so that's important. Make sure your face is flat. Just do a little extra prep work to make this work the best. You can feel that nub. I usually run that nub to where it's sitting on there. Then once you have that in there and you have that nub in there, I just put a little bit of hot glue to start with. Whoa. Oh, great. Let's put a little bit of hot glue in there and then let that dry. And then I hot glue a bunch of hot glue in there after that first thing of hot glue is dry. But I don't want the hot glue flowing down in front of the sensor. So, alright, we got a frosty look here. And once I do get it where I want it, I always put another glob of glue over it. In fact, I'll put a couple over it. Just keep piling it up until it's completely encased in glue. It's starting to do its thing. You can tamp it down while it's still a little cool if you want, like that. Just get it to where you want it exactly. Then after that, we're going to turn it around. And we're going to pretty much do the same thing on the other side, but this time with the receiver. Now, one thing you want to make sure you have the nipple pointing that way. One time I put it in, I don't know what I was thinking, and I didn't have the nipple pointing the correct way, and that was a problem. So make sure you've got your nipple pointing the correct way. Clean that face off. And then after you get this in here, you can test it using the
Arduino just to make sure. And these things are coming off, but I'm not worried about that right now. I just want to make sure I get my thing in, and I'm going to get it down there as far as I possibly can so that I can get the sensor to work. I want that to break the sensor as close to the top as possible, because some of these slot cars will have like a flag that doesn't go down in there as far, and I want to make sure that it works with all brands of slot cars. So I'm just going to hold that, let that glue in there. I usually try to keep these as, you know, parallel as possible, up and down. You also want to make sure that you're in the hole, that you're not like got this behind, because it won't work if you've got this behind the plastic. So that's why I like to get my holes as far down in there as possible, and then I make sure I get these down in there and get them as far in the hole as possible. It's actually cold out here right now. We're in the garage and it's winter, so it does help the glue to cool off sooner, but it still doesn't cool off as quickly as I'd like it to. So it is a little bit more of a daunting task to sit here and hold this. It's starting to get there now. Now I'm going to look and make sure that everything looks good. You should be able to see the little nubs from each one of the sensors. I can see the red one for sure because it's red. And then before I actually put any more glue on here, I'm going to go take this back to the thing and check it, make sure that light comes on whenever I turn it. The light should come on immediately, and then the light should turn off when I stick something in the slot. Let me see if I can make that happen here. I think I can just go get my Arduino. The problem is I don't have a regular plug for my Arduino, so I need the computer to make it work, but I think I'll set the computer here. So I'll be right back. I'm going to go get the computer. We're going to test this, make sure this is working. And you can see we have a light, so that light means that they can actually see each other. And then we'll take something, we'll find something here. Okay, so you can see I've got this, and you can see the lights on, and I'm going to run this through the slot. Looks like I got a little bit of hang up on the slot, so I'll have to clean that up. But anyway, you can see I run that through the slot, and just like a slot car going through the slot. And you can see the lights going off when I run this through the slot. Got a little bit of a burr in there. It's catching. I'll clean that up. I'll put some sandpaper on this and run it down through my slot. But the main thing is it is when I stick this in the slot, it is catching, so that means it is working. So that means that one's good. And so I can go ahead and just I'll put a bunch more glue on here, just to kind of make sure everything's seated in there really good. I'll put a little glue on top. Don't want to get crazy because I don't want it running down in there, but and then we'll test it again. If that light goes out, that means something's breaking the plane, and that's not good. So we'll let that dry, and then we're going to do the same thing over here. Okay, so now that we've got both of the sensors in, we've got them both glued in, we've got them tested. Now we've got to decide where we want to put these little pieces here. So they can go on either side of the track. I like to put them on the same side of the track because that's the side of the track I'm going to have my wires come out. You can notch this for the wires and do all that stuff if you want. But I usually put them on one side or the other. I'm going to put them on this side, but it doesn't matter which side you put them on. And what I do is I just take these things, and don't worry if these things pull out, because you can always reattach these. But what I do is I take these things and I find where I want them. I put them fairly close to this. You can't put them right on top of each other because of these things sticking out, but I put them fairly close to this, and then I just take some hot glue and I just clunk it down into there,
so that I've got my cables can come out the side here, and I try to put them as close together as possible. So I'm just going to put a glob of hot glue right here. I put a pretty good sized glob there. You can let it cool for a second. And then what I do is I just take my little controller and I just shove it down in here. The only bad part about this is you can't see where the VCC and ground and everything is after this, so you have to kind of use a third one to look at it, or you can mark on the track where those are if you want to, but you'll lose the ability to see that. And if you just hold it in there, it'll stick it in there real good after a while once it starts to dry. And then you'll do the same thing with the other one. You want to push it down enough to where, you know, these are underneath the edge of this, so that you can either put something on here if you want, or when you're setting it on the floor or the table, it'll be up. It's going to be close, but it should go down enough to fit in. Now that one's pretty secure. I'm going to bring this one around. I'm going to put this one right next to this one, so I'll take some of these wires and shove them through to go to your controller. So, and like I said, I'm using an Arduino for my controller, but you can, if you've got something else you can use, you can do that too. Raspberry Pi, you know, whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this one down to here. Just let that glue set up. And the glue will hold them pretty good. You can make a piece. Carrera uses black plastic pieces on top of their electronics to kind of protect them. You can get a plastic piece and screw it into here. You can actually screw into these if you want. That might eliminate you being able to put things through there. It just depends on what you're wanting to do with your track. I haven't put anything on the bottom of mine. Mine's sitting on the floor, so the wires are just underneath there. And the wires won't, you have to run the wires over the top of this. And this is pretty much at floor level, so you are going to get a little bit of a bulge out of this track. Just know that. Once it starts to cool off, I'll get my wires hooked up, and then I'll show you how to attach them. We're going to use a Carrera trick that I learned from Carrera. That probably prior to doing any of this Carrera stuff I would be appalled by, but now it's my favorite trick in the world. So, okay, so that's pretty much glued down. I'm going to I like to push these down now that they're in there, push them down as far as they go. Like that orange one down, just kind of push them down so that they're as flat as possible. You're not going to get perfectly flat because no matter what, you have to run this wire over the top. So I just hook them down as best I can and get them. I'll get these all hooked up. Get you some good packing tape. This is what Carrera does. Like I said, doing electrical projects, I would have cringed at this originally, but I'm telling you what, with these tracks, it works so good that you just can't deny it. You know, the tape holds really well, keeps everything taped down where you want it, and it just works. So kudos to you, Carrera, for doing this, and I'm going to do the same thing. And then I'm just going to make sure I tape over these junctions so that they don't pull apart, and tape over things so they don't get hung up on stuff, and just tape the crap out of it. So just give it a good taping. And you can get tape up on here and everything. If you make a piece of plastic to go over here, the tape will never show. So just this one is not wanting to. Got me another one of these so I can tell where things go, and then I can look underneath and I can see that VCC's in the middle, ground is on the left, and out is on the right. So I'm just going to do ground VO like that. So I'll know that that's how those are, so that when I'm hooking them up I won't have to remember. So
So we got V and G go this way. And we're not going to worry about data right this second. We're going to just hook up the V and G on these. And we want to make sure that we got a light, and we do, so that one's working. And then the same way over here, we got a light, so that one's working. So now we can finish taping everything down, and everything will be good. And once you get these taped down, these things aren't going to move at all. So you don't have to worry about the wires coming loose. But like I said, if you don't like this plug-in type thing like I'm doing, just solder them together. You know, just solder them right together, and then you'll never have to worry about them coming loose. I'm taping them down, so I think they'll be fine. If they come loose on me, I'll probably eventually take these apart and just solder them all together. But, well, there you go. Everything's taped down real good. Like I said, you can cut a piece of plastic, lay it over here, and screw them into these tabs that are sticking up, and then it'll be good to go. And then you've got your track ready to go. And there's my two things coming out that are going to connect to my controller. Now, one thing I am going to do here is I am going to take me this old memory card. I'm going to put some sandpaper on it, and I'm going to run it through the... So this is a little piece of 220 sandpaper. I'm just going to put it over the end of this to mimic a slot from a slot car. And then I'm just going to take it and I'm going to run it down the slot and sand it so that I don't have any burrs that are going to stop my flags from going down here. This is just a good practice. Yeah, look at that. Nothing to catch now. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. With using the melting process, it does kind of cause a little bit of flange. But I don't want anything catching when my cars are coming through here. So I'll just run this through here. It does a really good job of flattening everything out. And the dust won't hurt your sensors. Now when I run my flange down, my slot down here, oh yeah, that's smooth, very smooth. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hook up one last time while we're sitting here at the bench and just make sure that didn't affect the functionality. Like I said, all we need to hook up is our ground and our VCC. So, and we just need to hook it up for a second just to make sure our lights come on. So let's see, make sure we got lights on this one. If anything's breaking the plane, the light won't be on. So get on there. Come on. That one's working. That one's working. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and throw a couple wires on here just so that I can test it. I'm going to use some female to female wires here, and then I just want a bunch of 3. So we'll take this 3, and then I've got another bunch here, and it looks like it might be the same exact colors. That's good. So here we go, yellow, green, and purple and blue, I guess. There we go, and then. Well, these aren't connected. There's 3 that are connected. Okay, we'll just use these 3. I like to keep them connected here, so. And then we're just going to hook them up so that we can go, because we're going to go do some data testing now. Now that we've got it working, we know that they function. We'll do some data testing just to make sure. Like I said, you can notch this out if you want, but I've just got mine sitting on it like that. It's going to have a little bit of a flare because even the wires are going to be, you know, a little higher than what the track surface is. So you're going to have a little bit of a bump there, but it's not going to be enough to be crazy noticeable. Put this on the table like that, you can see it's pretty flat. And now we're going to take it into the other room and we're going to hook up the computer to it, and we're going to see if we get a thing that says lap. Okay, so now we're back at the testing table and we're going to test this. As you can see on the screen, it's set up to show the when something laps. So we're going to start with a Scale Electric analog car. And here we go, we got a lap on lane 1. We got a lap on lane 2. We've got a Carrera Go car. Lap on lane 1.
lap on lane 2, and a scale electric car, you can do a lap on lane 1 and a lap on lane 2. So it's picking up all the cars, it's working perfectly, and that's pretty much how you do it.